So today we'll see custom iterable in a batch class. So actually in batch class, what we have seen so far. So we are going to process a more number of records using a database dot query locator, which will support up to 50 million records. And each batch size by default it will give a 200, and or we can control the batch size. And we can even do a call outs, and we can make it stateful and all. This is all fine. But what actually a database.query locator does, even though the start method called only once, but the execute method will be get called. So it is sharing the locator to the execute method. So whatever the query that we are providing in the start method, it will share the locator saying, okay, this is the result set, and you can just some kind of a pointer towards the location, and from there the size it will take. If I want to display in a graphical way, if we having a query and the query results are going to be 1 million or 2 million records, but it will not returning all those records in a single time. It will not do that. So what it will does was it will share the locator of that records, and from there it will take only the size of the records. For example, um, if I'm having a big records, okay. So what will happen? So let's say my size of the batch was something 5 records at a time. Okay, but my start query give me around 100 records, for example. So what will do was it will share the locator with the execute method. Okay, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is your let's first thing it will give a locator over here, and it will execute method. So execute method from this location it will take how many number of records that you define in your batch. Once it is done, again it will check the locator. So once it's done, then the locator will be shifted to the second point. And after that, so if already execute second time, then locator will move on. So what will happen in that record, the locator will be keep on moving. The locator was keep on moving, but not the entire query. Similarly, we have a concept of a custom iterable. So here in the database query locator, what we are doing, we are just using a SQL query and sharing the location of the query results with the execute method. But if we have a business scenario where we cannot extract the data in a single query, so we need to extract the multiple queries, and we need to decide the data what need to be processed. Okay, so in those scenarios, we can go for the custom iterable. But in a custom iterable, we don't have the limits of a 50 million. We can only process up to 50,000 records only using a custom iterable. And it's no need to be as objects. It could be a strings, or it could be any kind of a data formats of a collection type. It's no need to be as objects. It could be string or numbers, or it could be anything that you can process in a custom iterable, but it has to be collection, and we are providing a list of records in each iteration. Okay, so in a custom iterable, in a batch class, so it's not going to be a single batch class. So we're going to have multiple batch classes to define what is our iterable and how we are going to iterate it. Now there are going to be a two classes. One is a iterable class and one is a iterator class. So iterable is where actually the method is returning the data to a batch class, and iterator will decide the data that is going to provide in a iterable class. So iterator, so it will implements the standard class called iterator, and it has to add methods has next or a next. So what it is, so has next will define whether you having any next records in the iterator or not. Next will define what is the next value of your record. So let's say in the query locator example, so what is the next record means you will just see the next record in the list. Whereas here has next or on the next will not actually go, like you can use the normal list also, but you can do a multiple logics like with the different queries you can check, and on the check you can define whether you want to pass the record or you want to skip the record also. You can decide in the has next and the next. Now in the has next you're going to check, and the return type of this method is return type of the method is a boolean value, and if true then it will call the next method. If false it will end the iterator. That's it. So either it will return the value of the next one. So if there is no other value and if has next is a false, then that's all. The iterator will end. And now next. So the return type is the data type that we are using to data type that is used to iterate. Any S object you can use, or any wrapper class you can use, or string and number. You can use any kind of a data types that you can return in the next. But same thing has to be implemented in a batch. Same thing has to be implemented in an iterable. Everything you has to, whatever the data, it could be a wrapper class or it could be a object or it could be a any primitive data types. It doesn't matter. Just you're going to decide what is the next value in it. That's it. The value could be any kind of a data type. Now, fine. And here, along with the has next and next, these are the two methods. And we are going to calculate what is the next value and if it has a next value in it or not while processing the data. Okay, now iterable. So iterable, what it does, iterable, it will implement the standard standard class called iterable only. iterable, and it is not having any methods, and it is um, it will be using the iterator class and um, pass the data to batch class. So it will act like a mediator between a iterator and a batch class. So in a batch class also we are going to use a iterable method. So we'll define a class and we will use this class instance in a start method to return the values to a batch class. And from there onwards, so batch class will be using the iterable class instance to get the data. So that's all for the theory part, and we can query up to 50K records. So when you're having a multiple queries that you're using in your custom iterator and iterable, it will be a combined result that you can query up to 50,000 records, not more than that. And it's not for a single batch, it's for a whole batch. We can iterate up to a 50,000, or we can query up to 50,000 records only. Let's say if you're having a 4 objects that you're going to query and decide what need to be passed in your iterator. In those scenarios also, combining all those 4 queries, you can query up to 50,000 records only. That's what the limit over here. Other than that, I think remaining everything was same. Okay, now let's see some example. Sorry. So I was just showing the Salesforce documentation for the example, and we'll use that. While Apex class, let's say I will name it as a account iterator. I'm going to name it as. Then I'm going to implement the iterator, and once I implement the iterator method, I has to implement. Sorry, I has to implement the methods called has next and next methods. So let's say my iterator, I'm going to iterate on a count objects. So it's going to be a public. If it is a next method, I'm going to return the account value. And is my next method. So I have to return one account. Let's say I have a account equal to new account. So I have to return the account over here. And next method I'm going to have is a public boolean and saying has next this method, we're going to return true or a false. You need to return this value. So these are the method required to create a iterator method. Now, so how you're going to let's say pass the data. So let's say if you're having a record type or something that you want to put a constructor. So I'm going to take the input as a let's say account record type, something like this I'd like to take. And here I'm going to decide my list of account. The list of mm, account on processed, and then account processed going to have a new list of account. So what I'm trying to do here, so I will try to query on the only this records. What I will do is I'll write a query here. Select ID comma name from account where record type dot name equal to account record type what I'm trying to pass here. So what are the account record type I have? So I would like to query on those records. So in the sorry, and on top of it, I'm going to use some kind of a integer or a integer as my ACC index. I'm going to give us a 0 first, and here I'm going to in the processed account list I'm going to instead of just doing this, I will be calling the account processed that is of this index having, and in the has next what I will decide I will be having some size over here, right? So if the size is less than the whatever the account index I have, if that index okay, size minus one, so index will be always one value less, right? So the size minus one, if it is less than the index, okay, this way. So these are all the what are all the index available. So let's say if the size is 4 minus 3, so the index value will be 0 1 2 3. Only the 4 values I can allow. So if the account index is within that range, I'm going to say it's the condition will be getting true, right? So it's a S has next value. So if index is crossing this value, that means this condition will become false. That means it will indicating that we don't have any next values in the my iterator. That's how we can provide the condition with the has next, so that if has next is false, it will not enter into the method called a next method. It will not enter. And in the has next method, we have to increment this every time. Now is called, will be return that value and will increase the index, and again it will check the has next, okay, if it is meeting the condition or not, and then it will go to the next method and return the value and again check the has next, and if it is true, return the value. If it is a false, it will end the loop. Okay, unreachable statement. Okay, so we do it here. or you can even check here also. You can put either has next or next. Both will be called during the iterator. So you can keep both the methods. That's what your iterator. And now I'll write one more class called account iterable. Account iterable method. It implements iterable account iterable method. So here, what I'm going to do here was the account iterable method. Mm, so just we have to return the new account iterator. That's it. And the iterator, it has to be with some string value. So what I'm having, customer, can have a customer or something, or you can have some in a loop, and you can return the values over there. Okay, let me check something is missing. The iterable yes account, and then okay, it has to iterator of the accounts. Okay, has to be account and iterator of the account. Iterator. So we're returning this value account iterator. So we have to declare the return type of that iterator. So account iterator must implement the method called iterate. Okay. Iterator is the method. Okay. We're going to have an iterator. So that will return the iterate. So the iterator will be having each record that we are going to decide which account will be the next value. But in the iterator, it will be having it will collect the list of the it will collect the list from the iterator, and it will return only the list of accounts. So here it will not return a single account. Let's say if your batch size you're going to declare 10, and it will wait for this iterator to accumulate 10 values, and then it will return the 10 values to the it of this method, iterator method. And we're going to call the iterator iterator class, so that we're passing the value, and based on this value it will here I'm using only one query. You can decide, or you can have multiple queries, and you can decide what values you want to process. So you can have a logic over here, and has next also you can define. So I keep it very simple, and we can make it more complex. So we have option to have our custom logic in a iterator and a iterable. And how we're going to write a batch class using a custom iterable. Batch with a custom iterable. So here implements database dot batchable. Okay, here we're going to have in database.query locator, we'll be having a S object. Here, we need to check what we're going to do here. So we'll be having public and start method, and then what else we'll be having? Public execute method, and then we'll be having a public finish method. So finish method, the return type would be a void, and execute method return type is void. Here start method, you're going to have a we're going to have a return new account iterable. So we're going to return this account iterable over here, and here also from you can pass some values to it, and then all the methods you're going to have a database dot batchable context. You can give anything over here, variable name. So that will be parameter to the all the methods, while as the execute method will be having a list of account. That's going to be your scope. Core logic here. This no need to be a scope. Okay, so you can give like any variable. I think last time also we discussed. So I'm saying account list or something. You can define that also. All are the just a parameter. This no need to be always BC. You can give anything that you want, but it has to be a variables over there. That's it. Okay, now here to give account or subject we'll see, and the return type of it also will be a stuff accounts. So iterable of account will be having, and account and scope account. Okay, so this is a account iterable, so it's going to be a iterable of account. Just yeah, iterable of account, iterable of an account. It's a iterator of account. Here the return type would be a iterator of account, and here we are calling iterable, so it's a iterable of account. And this is how a syntax for a batch class using a custom iterables. Okay, having any questions?
Yeah, but one question. So in the batch class, usually we give it as a S object, right? And while declaring database.batchable S object,
Right.
and then we can convert it as like account or anything like.
Right.
So here we are directly declaring as a account. So
Yeah. So
No.
whereas a
Yeah, but
batch class, it is a generic one. So you can write any query. So it will support all the subject types. But whereas in custom iterator, if you are having a S object, so if your iterable is saying S object, you can still use a S object there. Because I'm using an account here and I'm going to write my custom iterator on an account, I was using an account. Let's say if I'm using a string over here instead of account, I having some wrapper class or a string. I'm going to use all the place using that string or a wrapper class. And then in this case, it's going to be a wrapper class here. What are the wrapper class I'm going to use? That is going to be my parameter or like a data type that I'm going to process the batch. If I'm using a string, it could be string. If I'm using a wrapper class, it's going to be wrapper class. If I make it my custom iterable as a S object, so which can support any object, and I declare all the data types as S object types, then it will support the S object types. And here in the iterator, you can process if you have any kind of logic that will process the multiple objects, and just instead of this account type, you will pass the what is your account, so that it will be having a logic on that object, either account, contact, lead, opportunity, or any custom object. If you want to have, you can have such logic. So based on your iterator data type that you're using, you have to declare the same data type. Whereas in database.query locator, we always using a query to that query is used to in a start. So you can write queries on only on S objects. So we have a generic as a S object type.
okay. Okay, Bala.
Okay, and that's how it is. Okay, this one. So I think we have 3 minutes left. Any questions we have, you can ask, or just will join back and just I will give some. Already we have recordings. I'm going to upload in the channel, and just I will give a high level overview what actually we covered yesterday, and then whatever we have the next plan we'll discuss. Thank you guys. Please join back.